Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I'm ready to do my first impressions on this. This is the Chaves 229 Redencion. I think that's the right term for it. This is the blackout version of the knife. It is built by Riat for Ramon Chaves, and if you watch my unboxing, you'll see that I have also in the past owned a 228, the Riat produced version again, and liked parts of that knife but didn't love it. I've never been a huge fan of the skull pocket clip, and there are some things about Chaves knives that just aren't my style. But I really like Ramon. I think he's an awesome maker, and there are aspects of this knife that I find to be phenomenal. So it's going to take, I think, my whole review process to figure out whether this is going to be a long-term keeper for me, or if this will just be another fun Chaves to have tried and then let go. I don't know yet. Before anyone asks in the comments if I do let this go, if they can purchase it, I literally already have a line of at least 5 people who have specifically messaged me asking that in the event that I sell it, that I give them first dibs. So some of those guys are some of my best friends in the community, and they will have first dibs. This knife I don't think is going to be available if I do decide to let it go. So I'm sorry. I know that they're not particularly easy to get, but that's what it is. So I don't know really where to begin with this. I guess let's start with the clip, the elephant in the room. I've been pretty open all along in my channel that my preference on clips are loop over style deep carry clips. That's what I prefer in a clip. I like the way that they function for me. I like the way that they look. I typically like the way they feel in hand. What I don't often like are clips that are big and milled titanium or steel, and I don't like usually knife clips that scream, "I have a knife in my pocket." This absolutely does those things. But in hand, I find the Chaves clip is comfortable for me. It's not hot spotty. It's nice and rounded here at the bottom. The top of the skull is rounded. There's no sharp corners or edges on it. In and out of pocket, it goes in and out fairly easily. It's got good retention. It works at being a pocket clip. What I don't love is how it looks. But with how much I respect Ramon Chaves and like him as a maker, and each of the times I've met him at knife shows, he's just been so genuine and polite and kind and really down to earth. I feel like I'm kind of starting to give the clip a pass because it's like his signature on the knife, and it just, without this clip, I don't know that it would still really seem like a proper Chaves. Like, I could probably find an aftermarket alternative, a custom clip that I could put on here, and that would be fine, right? I'd probably like the way it would look a little bit better overall, but then it would feel less like his knife, and part of why I've wanted this is because it feels like it's his knife. So that's just, it's interesting. I'm coming to terms with the clip, I think, and just accepting that if this knife is in my pocket, I'll probably only carry this places or on days when I know I'm not going to a place where I specifically wouldn't want my pocket to be screaming that it has a knife in it. Because this is the most murdery looking clip of any knife that is currently in my possession, or frankly has ever been in my possession. An interesting tidbit as well. I unboxed this knife night before last. I carried this knife all day yesterday, and I came out of here where I was filming and I showed it to my wife and daughter, and oftentimes my daughter likes to name things. She just likes assigning names to things. It's fun for her. She comes up with some pretty cute names every now and then, but I asked her what she wanted to name this one. I don't think I even asked her. I think she just blurted out what she wanted to name it, and she says, "Oh, Dad, you should call that one Death Skull." And I was like, what? That's like not typical of a thing for her to say. And so I was like, why should I call it Death Skull? And she goes, because it's got a skull on it and it's black. And I was like, all right, Death Skull it is. So as long as this knife is mine, it shall henceforth be known as Death Skull, because my 5-year-old daughter made the correct observation that it has a skull on it and it is black like death. So this is also probably the most metal knife I've ever owned. Not in terms of what it's made of, but I've owned plenty of knives made of metal, but like metal, you know. It's just, it is an out there motif for this knife. So this one is obviously the all blacked out version, and that's part of why I think I'm really vibing with this one more than I would otherwise. I'm starting to just really appreciate this knife, and it's weird because there are so many rules of mine that it breaks in terms of my preferences, right? Like the pocket clip, big one. This jimping, I don't know that I'll ever get over this jimping. I hate this jimping. It is absolutely bad jimping in my opinion. I know there are people out there who like jimping. The fact that it's so widely set apart and deep, it just, maybe in gloves would feel better for me, but I don't know that there are many people using this knife with gloves. I don't know, I don't dig this jimping at all. It's thumb studs, which is generally one of my less favored ways to open a knife, but it's fantastically tuned. The amount of pressure I have to push with my thumb to get just an amazing deployment is just right. I can middle finger flick it, which is my favorite way to open a knife, although I prefer to do it with a hole than with a stud, because holes are greater than studs. So yeah, it's just like, it's, as thumb stud knives go, it's phenomenal. I just said this as well in my review, or my first impressions, I should say, of the Pina Mula, which is also made by Riat. This kind of feels like a little less intense version of this. But these thumb stud actions that Riat is producing right now, it's just phenomenal. And then closing this knife to get past the detent ramp, I mean, it's stupid drop shutty. It's so smooth. Everything about it is like, it feels so refined in some ways, but then like haggard in others. Like this jimping is not refined to me. Not even close. It doesn't feel at all like a refined knife feature. And this pocket clip, I don't know who's calling that refined, right? Like it's well made. It's clean in terms of its presentation for what it is, but that doesn't look refined to me, right? But the way that this knife feels and acts feels pretty refined. And then the blade grind, this hollow for this like kind of primary edge down here is so good. It's a nice tall hollow grind. Tall hollow grind, that's hard to say. It gets real thin behind the edge, and then we've got the flat grind up here for this tip, and the fact that they've done a nice proper compound grind on here, it feels really good. And this drop point, I think, is one of the best looking drop point blades in the game. It's true to Ramon's design. It looks fantastic to me. I love his drop point. The swedge, nice and long all the way back to here. The jimping, I will say, looks kind of cool on the blade up there. It's just a gorgeous knife in so many ways. Yeah, I don't know. I love the blade, except for the jimping on it. I love the action. It's addicting to play with. I spent hours last night on the couch watching The Office, editing some videos, and just playing with this knife. It feels so good. I really adore playing with it. The centering is perfect. The tolerances all feel just right. Everything about it is well made and well done. And I don't know, I like it. Another thing worth mentioning, the 228, because the handle was a little shorter, this corner really kind of dug into my palm more than was comfortable. This one doesn't do it at all because it's got just that little bit more size and length to it. This size also feels more appropriate to me for being a Chaves. I don't think of Chaves knives as being small. I think of them as being kind of laughably big. And even though this blade isn't crazy long, this knife is big. It is thick this way. It is not thin this way. It's fairly long. The handle is also just so like rectangular. There's nothing about this knife that is like smooth and swoopy in design. It's just like, boom, this is a Chaves, you know? And I don't know, that's kind of the allure of it. Like, it's almost, if I have to really think of it, it's almost so fun for me, I think, because it is breaking so many of my rules. But it's doing it in a good way. Like a lot of these rules that I have, jimping aside, that is just bad on here, but like that, my preferences for clips and my preferences for weight and size and like thinness this way and all that, it's often because when knives don't do those things, I really just don't like them as a whole. But this one, it does those things in a way that's fun and like, I don't know, it's different. So as you can see, I'm struggling to put this one into words. So let's real quick just go over a couple of points on it, then we'll call it good, and then maybe in my full review I'll have more clear thoughts on it. So let's talk ergos real quick. Ergos on this are good except for the jimping. Don't like the jimping at all. Everything else feels very pleasant in my hand actually. Action, phenomenal. Through the roof good. As thumb stud knives go, best of the best. Really, really like it. Carry. It is heavy, it is thick, it is big, and it has this clip on it. It feels like you have a Chaves in your pocket. So, if you want to feel like you have a Chaves in your pocket, boom, this will do it for you. If you don't want to really know that your knife is there at all times that it's on you, like you want it to disappear in pocket and be pleasant to carry, this is not your guy. This feels like there's a Chaves in your pocket. Yeah, cutting performance. I've only done a very little bit of cutting with this so far. Really only opened a package with it. But it did great. It's got a very sharp edge on it. That grind, I'm excited to use because it is so thin behind the edge. There is a lot of good happening here on this blade, so I think cutting performance is going to be good, but I'll have to speak more to that when I do the full review because I just haven't cut much with it. So yeah, that'll be that. That's my first impressions so far on the Chaves 229. It is a knife that is mystifying to me because I shouldn't be liking it as much as I am, and I don't know, I'm liking it so far. So there you have it. I'll see you guys on the next one, but this has been the Chaves 229 Blackout Redencion something. I think I've got all the terms in there. Anyways, thanks guys.